This video clip is for the presenter of the first Bible Tell, Be a Man of God, Be Courageous. This is the story of David and Goliath. I hope to help you make that presentation. Picture yourself in a campfire setting with all the dads and sons gathered around. I encourage you to make sure that the dads and sons are sitting close to each other, perhaps with the dads right behind the sons. When it's time to do your Bible Tell, it's a storytelling. You're not using any notes, but you are using the Bible just to read a couple verses. So have your flashlight ready since it's probably late at night. How do you prepare for a Bible Tell? Well, there are some coaching notes here, but I really find it to be helpful to be very familiar with the Bible itself. Read it several times and picture in your mind the different characters and settings to help it come alive. Also, you might pick out the paragraph points and write them on a piece of paper and have them in your Bible. It'll help you go through the Bible event in a smooth fashion. You want to involve your audience and let the Bible Tell be something that you participate in together. For example, in this Bible Tell, we take suggestions from the boys of Yo Mama jokes, and they know many of them. And these are some of the things that Goliath supposedly might be shouting to King Saul and his armies. Now, there's some sensitivity in that because we need to make sure that, especially since we're at a father-son retreat talking about honoring women, that this is not an example of honoring women. As a matter of fact, it's one of those ultimate insults to insult someone's yo mama. So just kind of make sure that's qualified in there if you do those kinds of audience participation activities. Let me give you an example of what it would be like. I would have my Bible here, and some of my main points may be tucked right in there. I want you to picture this. On this side of the valley, up along the ridge, the Israelite army. On the other side, the Philistine army. Ready to do battle, and every day they would come and yell at each other, trying to figure out when's the best time to attack. From this army comes a champion. His name is Goliath. He's 10 foot tall. As a matter of fact, what would that look like? Could I have, Jason, could you get on your dad's shoulders for a second? Let's see how tall 10 foot tall is. Okay, so we watch that. Now, picture him 10 foot tall with a helmet of bronze on top of that. And then he has a suit of armor that's 125 pounds. How much do you weigh? Anthony, how much do you weigh? That's as much as you. That's just the armor there. He has shin pads of bronze. He has a javelin of bronze back here. He has a spear that's about as big around as your calf muscle, and it's so heavy that the end of it, the tip alone, weighs 15 pounds. So there he is, 10 foot tall, dressed head to toe in full armor. As a matter of fact, probably one of the only vulnerable spots would be a little spot in his armor right here where you could see his eyes, and a little bit right here. But this is a champion of war that would frighten anyone. Now I want you to think about the things that frighten you, because this guy certainly frightened them. We're going to come back and talk about what are the things that do frighten us. Day after day, Goliath would march down to the valley, and you can imagine what the Philistine army behind him, when they see him march, would get to do. Thump, thump, thump. Goliath. Thump, thump, thump. Goliath. Let me hear you, Philistine army. Goliath. It's a psych out. All right, now all the guys, of course, are doing this, and it's a huge psych out. He lands down in the valley, he looks up at the Israelites, and then he says this. Hey, Saul! Yo, mama! Yo mama, so what? Oh, here it is. We're insulting his mama. And we start pulling out some of those things. Now you guys know that it is not right to insult another woman, especially someone's mama. So this is low. And actually, though we know that he probably wasn't insulting, after we've already done all the yo mama jokes, though he probably wasn't insulting Saul's mama, he was insulting something far more important. He was insulting Saul's God. It was like he's saying, I defy you, Saul. I defy your armies and I defy your God. Now, what would you do if you were part of that army up there and someone were insulting you that way, and especially insulting your God? Wouldn't there be someone who would stand up to make a stand for that? Well, in this case, there was no one. And I'm wondering if it's because in the chapter before we hear how the Spirit of the Lord had been pulled away from Saul because Saul had not been following him with his whole heart. And maybe that was an atmosphere that was contagious among the men then, that left them moreover as cowards instead of being courageous. But enters the picture a little boy. Well, not just a little boy, but a boy about your size, maybe just a bit older. His name is David. He's the 8th son of his father, tending sheep in... Okay, and so now I'm going to go ahead and stop right there, and then I'm going to have David come on up, and you can see how the storytell emerges. Now, a couple verses I'm going to make sure that I mark and I come to is that when I see David looking on over into the valley and seeing Goliath, what does he say? I want to read that verse. He says, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that dare mock the army of the living God?" That's a great guy line. So that's a line that I would use. And then also another line, I would make sure, you come to me with sword and spear, but I come to you in the name of the living God. And then David tells him what he's going to do with him. So those are some of those verses that you're going to have marked in your Bible and ready to turn to. At the end of the storytell, you've had a lot of fun experiencing this, but let's bring it into our lives. And to do that, let's talk about it. Amongst the group altogether, you might ask this question. What was it that David saw that no one else saw that gave him courage? While everyone else saw the size of the giant, David saw the size of the giant slayer. He saw the size of God. And he had confidence in him, and that gave him courage to face this giant. Now, we all face giants in our lives. What are some of the kinds of giants that we face? Let's just hear some of the different things that intimidate us or might cause us to get a little bit weak-kneed or afraid. What are some of those things? Take some suggestions from the guys. How is it that God, then, can be the giant slayer? How is it that he can help you overcome and give you victory in that? I'm going to ask that we now to talk about some of those things, that fathers and sons would take about 10 minutes aside, and dads, tell your son about a giant that you used to face sometimes when you were growing up. How did that end up? And if there's any advice you could give yourself now about back then, what would it be? And sons, talk about one of the giants that you face in your world. And what you plan on doing to have the giant slayer, God himself, give you the courage to find victory against that giant. So let's go do that now. After the presentation, after the discussion, we come on back and we hear a little bit of feedback from it. It's wonderful if you have some song and worship. And then we have a time of prayer and blessing. We gather around in a circle. The fathers are behind the sons. And then we ask that each dad would bless their son with a simple word. I bless you, Jared, to be a man of God, to be courageous, to be honorable, to be faithful to the end. And the father can add another prayer on top of that right after that. But it's just another way to speak that blessing over that child and do that in the company of men. There could be also a time for other prayer amongst the entire group, however you decide that you'd like to lead that. So, make the Bible come alive and help it fit into their lives. God's going to do wonderful things. Thank you.